Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest from the world of business, entrepreneurship, and recruiting to harness your own inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, I am back at my favorite away studio here in Delray Beach with the one and only Mr. Joe Mullings. Welcome back for the 1800th time, sir.
Good to have me here.
I love it because this is now an annual tradition. This is the third year in a row. And I decided this year, we're just going to call it the State of the Mullings Union. This is what we're going to do here today. And Joe's a little bit jet lagged. He just flew in from Boston. When you're in Boston, do you feel the need to have the accent a little bit to assimilate with the people?
I would never insult them. It's like when somebody comes to New York and tries to talk New York with me, and it's just not going to work.
It's not going to work.
He's a jerk off if you do that.
Exactly. LaGuardia, butter, water. That's a real
coffee, pajamas, draw.
Pajamas could be a little Boston, though.
I don't know. I haven't had a conversation about pajamas in Boston yet, though. So
we're going to save that for a behind-the-scenes take on this one. So we're going to get into it right here, and I want to do a couple of things. I want to talk shop, and I want to do a kind of a touch base with Joe and what's happening in Joe's world here. So this morning on LinkedIn, and sorry guys, I'm going to be looking down at my phone, not my crotch here. There was a word that stood out to me is adaptation. And as I'm getting ready this morning, the word is kind of swirling around in my head. Last year, we talked about a few different things around Great Resignation, the Great Migration, uncertainty, but now it's adaptation. Please share a little bit of your thoughts around this word and expand for the folks listening in.
Sure. So look, let's talk about business, and then we can certainly talk about social construct as well. But in business, it generally has a life of its own. It's got its subtle influences over time. There are the masters of the universe who drive where business goes, whether they're bankers, whether they're social influencers, whatever they are. But that is an evolution and tends to be less ballistic in nature. And when you do look back over the road over a 5, 10, 15-year period, you're like, how did that happen, right? But when you have an event like a pandemic on a Friday, everybody says, listen, go home for the weekend, be a couple weeks, and we'll figure this out. And 2 years later, some people still aren't back. That is a ballistic introduction of an external stimulus that nobody had counted on. There was no business model that accounted for that, no social world, et cetera. So what has to happen there is evolution gets pushed to the back of the line, and the immediacy of adaptation has to occur. Now, they do have something in common. Evolution and adaptation both have the risk of extinction introduced to them. But the extinction function in adaptation occurs very rapidly. In evolution, it sort of goes off into the sunset in a very slow way, and somebody notices, oh, the dodo bird is not here any longer. But in adaptation, when that doesn't occur at a reasonable rate that matches the required adaptation, you start to get extinction and, as I mentioned this morning, irrelevance in the workplace. And that's a really scary situation.
Yeah, so let's give a practical, tactical example of that. And there are companies that had to go most companies had to go fully remote pretty quickly. Some were well prepared for it. They were equipped. They had the systems and processes. Others did not. And by nature of the culture and the internal systems that they had, they were able to adapt and evolve into that world. And some of them are staying in that moving forward. Now we're talking end of February 2022, the return to office for many companies. And we're starting to see folks say, I want to go back. I don't want to go back. I want something in the middle there. Adapting to the idea of having a hybrid or remote workforce does not sit well with some company leaders.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't, because they're generally the smartest people in the room and they have history on their side. And so, look, leaders are not born. Leaders are made.
I agree.
I think it's like a great athlete. Great athletes are not born, they're made. Blessed specimens, muscle attachment, cognitive processing, fast twitch muscles, those are born, but great athletes are made through coaching and training.
Discipline.
And discipline too, but let's stay with coaching and training as it applies to the workforce at a distance. There are great leaders out there who will quickly adapt to where we are today via Zoom, but they already have the gravitas, they already have the influence, they already have been sitting in that leadership seat. If you're coming out of the gate, you're a year out of university, you're 3 years out of university, and you don't get coached because you are now in a two-dimensional world at your desk, in your house or your WeWork space, whatever it is, I think it opens itself up for an enormous deficit that's coming right now on the coaching side of things.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. I've been saying this since day one. I spoke about this. This is the third time I'm talking about it. The folks that are going to get hurt the most are new employees into a company. If a company does not have a solid remote onboarding policy, they're not able to really understand the culture. Now, some folks will throw around the word culture. It doesn't have to be in a physical space, but I'll argue against that. But it's the newer, younger employees out there that are missing this. They're missing that one-on-one coaching. And let's be real about it. When you're remote, when you're working from home, there's less of a priority and emphasis on in the office training when you don't have the physical proximity to somebody on your team.
Look,
the impetus is missing.
Look, if you are not already experiencing Zoom fatigue, then you're probably not human. So please explain to me how at 3:00 in the afternoon, one of my younger teammates comes into my office and says, "You got a minute? I've got a challenge I need to run through with you," right? That doesn't happen on Zoom, and you can't get that physical. You got to schedule it, one, and two is if there is not something profoundly different on in-person engagement than two-dimensional engagement, you may be pathological in nature. Okay, so and then you start to aggregate these things over hours, days, weeks, months, years. There's going to be an enormous deficit in place. Romantically, we can make believe that this 2D world we're living in, or this metaverse that is being proposed, and all these other, it's going to leave an enormous gap in the workplace.
I truly believe humans are not meant to work in bubbles. We're not meant to work in silos. There's certain careers and fields. If you're coding, if you're behind the computer all day, I could start to understand that. But if you're in the people business, if you're in the recruiting business, and now some people could argue, hey, recruiting is an individual sport. You could do that. But let's be real about it. For someone who's been in this business for over 3 decades, the camaraderie, the conversations that you have with other recruiters, you're bouncing ideas, you're talking about candidate situations, you're talking about client dilemmas, that cannot be replicated remotely. I mean, parts of it can. You could Slack, you could Discord, you could do this and that, but you're going to lose steam and you're going to lose energy. What does the hybrid of that look like, where you're still giving your employees choice with a blanket of trust, real trust, not BS trust that we're just calling it buzzword trust, but what does the future of the workplace look like in a generalized best case scenario? Because it's different for every industry. It's different. You don't want your doctors working fully remote. Well, that's a whole other podcast. But
first of all, let's address the recruiting. In recruiting, we lived in a 2D world. We lived in a remote world. So we rarely, in most recruiting functions, did you interact face-to-face with people. Most of the time you were on the phone, back in the old days.
Still.
And you were chatting on the phone. So you didn't have, what is that stat? Communication, 7% of it is verbal. The rest of it's in-person, physical, body language, et cetera. So we learned to live like that, which is why I think recruiters are phenomenal communicators when you get them face-to-face with each other.
Case in point?
What's that? Yeah, case in point. And then when you build an organization, and we are tribal by nature, right? And there's science out there that shows, once you get more than 100 people in an organization, you actually have to start to bifurcate that organization and break it off into smaller tribes. So there's that. But there's going to become the penalty of scaling in digital. I think you can get away with digital and two-dimensional and virtual relationships. But the penalty of scaling that's going to occur when you try and make that 24/7, 365 is going to have an efficiency drop-off, a lack of true communication, and I think developmental skills are going to suffer. The people who are already leaders are getting to set the agenda on how engagement's going to occur. Here's what my concern is, and we talked about this last time we were together. There's no possible way the solution we came up with last March in a 24-hour period is the best solution, or even close to the best solution 2 years later.
No.
And now, so you're asking people to go, okay, we did this for survival, and I get that, and I respect that. But now, who's actually sat back at a distance and go, okay, now where do we go? That is going to be another seismic shift in the workforce. And I think leaders are going to be afraid of that, or wonder when they should pull that cord to make that seismic shift.
And that leads to a conversation about attrition, because there are folks that have gotten very comfortable working from home, and they love it, and it works well for them, and they've adapted their life, and it all kind of is now seamless. But for whatever reasons, it works. But what we don't talk about, and I think it's a big thing on social media and LinkedIn, we don't talk about the folks where that does not work for. The single parent at home with 3 kids with crappy Wi-Fi, and they're trying to get their work done, and they have little kids running around all day. Their performance is suffering. They're potentially about to lose their job, because we are going to get to a point, and we'll put a pin in this one, the Great Recalibration, as I like to call it, where the rubber hits the road and we'll say, okay, let's look back at the last couple of years. There's some folks that need to be in a physical office because this is their arena. This is their field. This is where they suit up and put their uniform on, and they're ready to go. And that's what we're not talking about. So are leaders so concerned about, oh my God, am I going to lose everybody if I ask people, if I kindly ask you, please come back to the office that you once started at a couple of years ago? Interesting scenario we got going on here.
I would agree with that. Here, the loudest voices right now are the people who, to your point, are, I don't want to go back to work. And they're easy to highlight, and they should be highlighted because that's a choice. I think this is also going to start to fraction the workforce. So if you want to work remote, there's always a consequence with every decision we make. If you want to work remote, you're going to be compromised on your ability to move up through the organization until that type of role that's been designed intentionally to be remote has its own path forward.
Pause on that for 1 second.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting point. We talk about promotion and growth in the workplace. Visibility is a huge component to your being reviewed for your performance. How your interpersonal skills are in the workplace. Does your boss, I don't like the word boss, but does your supervisor, superior, see how you're interacting, your body language? How you treat others is a huge performance metric. Are you nurturing them? It's kind of hard to do remotely.
Well, I think most of the really sort of evident leaders in the workforce today, and I tend to agree with them, not as aggressively as they portray it, but I do believe the soft skills are going to be really important moving forward. So there's a few things, is the soft skills, the ability to understand others, the ability to engage with others, to your point. We still are going to need subject matter experts in certain areas of the workforce. Having said that, though, you're going to need the people who are emotionally agile, because I don't like the word empathy, emotionally agile, that will be able to work effectively and lead effectively in the workforce. You can't learn emotional agility in isolation. You can certainly learn it and be less effective than in person. And I think this emotional agility component coming forward in the workplace, and the reason for emotional agility is because we're going to have to be lifelong learners. And I've been pushing this for years now, is the rate of change of technology, of social norms, of this disruption of the rightful disruption of the social fabric that's occurring right now for a number of reasons. How we buy, how we sell, how we integrate, how we've become less of an isolationist in regards to the rest of the world in the USA. You're going to need to be able to learn things at a very rapid rate and convince yourself that your education did not stop at 18 or 21.
let's double back here to, well, one, I'm curious, and I agree with this one. Empathy is a tremendous buzzword that I don't think everyone's like leading in way too heavy on, because if you're always empathetic, I don't think you're giving yourself the bandwidth to make rational decisions all the time, to think about it subjectively. But this new phrase, what's the difference?
Emotional agility versus empathy?
Correct.
Well, so emotional agility is the ability for you to dial in and dial down with whoever you're engaging with, right? And keep yourself safe. Like empathy to me is putting yourself in the if you go by the definition, the pure definition, putting yourself in the shoes of the person and what they are feeling right now. If you've had any meaningful relationship in your lifetime, if you love somebody and you have that empathy for them and they're going through something hard, that will absolutely drain you. And so if you were doing nothing but exposing yourself to empathetic scenarios on a daily basis, you were not going to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help others. And I believe that empathy has its place, but not at the scale that it's being tossed about irresponsibly today. Emotional agility gives you the ability to be like, I see where you're coming from. I understand it, right? I can relate. I can absolutely relate. I'm not going to get pulled into your pity party, and I'm not going to get played because people use empathy against you.
Yes, and that. Thank God we're talking about this. And I think we need to cancel empathy. No, I'm just kidding. Please remove this from the record. No, I'm just kidding on that one. But start to think about empathy a little bit differently. And to Joe's point, how draining it is and what that takes away from the energy required for you as a business leader, as a parent, as a friend, and all these other pieces. I absolutely love it. Hiring trends. Let's dig into this a little bit. Still a candidate-driven market out there.
More than ever. More than we've ever seen, and probably is not going to go away. Thank goodness the individual now has the leverage in the marketplace. Too long, companies have had way too much leverage in the marketplace.
We're starting to see
a little bit more of parity come around. Now, having said that, there's a responsibility to understand that people still have businesses to run. There's a responsibility to understand that 99.9% of the business models that are in place today were designed pre-February of 2020. And those owners, those entrepreneurs who were not making massive profits as an Amazon or a Walmart or a BOA, right? Like those are massive profit machines and deserve to be, because they create incredible opportunity for everybody on the planet. However, the entrepreneurs, the solopreneurs, the people who own the dry cleaners, the people who own the restaurants especially, those make up most of our ecosystem. Those people are not making massive money even pre-pandemic.
The margins weren't tremendous.
No, they were not. And now you've got people coming back with this you owe me, this entitlement mentality. You're going to end up creating a state where businesses will be going out of business at record rates, and you won't have a chair to sit in when the music stops.
And this is the truth, people. Anybody who doesn't believe this, just sit back and watch. And if we talk about recruiting, if we want to get into it, spoke about it last year, the salary asks, I'm using that word in lieu of demand because we're almost at a demand state, are astronomical. Now, I cannot fault a candidate or an individual for trying to take advantage of that arbitrage, right? Why not? This is your opportunity to make a significant jump in your salary. And companies are now up against the ropes. We're like, shit, we're losing people, attrition, and they're forced to pay these high salaries, also title-wise. So now you have somebody who's a manager, and they are calibrated at a manager level, and they're like, screw it, I'm gonna go for director level. I'm gonna get that 30% bump right now. They're in the interview. Company's like, shoot, our clients are upset, we can't fill this role here, and they're giving these salaries. What's going to happen? The Great Recalibration. The people are gonna be in the role for 6 months, the honeymoon phase is over, and now what? You have a subpar candidate in there, and the process is going to start all over again.
You're
That's just my take.
You're correct there. So look, if I've got a business, I never want to be held hostage based upon the market, but you've got to pay what the market's paying. So that's number one. Number two, it's not always money too. So I wrote a piece that got a lot of attention, where there are multiple levers to pull when you talk about a package as an employee.
Not just always money.
Right. It's not always money. Right. There's a number of
total comp. We call it total comp.
Total package, right?
Rewards,
whether
they call
it's
it now?
Time off, whether it's comp, bonus, et cetera, right? I got a number of levers to pull. But you spotted something very, very succinctly there is we are going to have a challenge with people rising beyond their level of competency based upon titles.
Some will.
There will be much more because of this than there were previously. So we used to have, within reason, a level of advancement in a career based upon competency. Sure, there's always nepotism. Sure, there's always incompetent people. We have that picture of that person in our face when we worked with them in the past. But for the most part, the reason the system works so well is the level of competency was determined by your title and vice versa. Now you've got people being pushed up into, or here's the other. I'm sorry, this salary is staked at 150 at director. At 180, because it's a legacy pay model. In order for me to give you 180, I got to give you the VP title. Well, I'm not taking less than 180. Well, we're going to kick you up to VP to rationalize the silly pay parity that I had in place. So now I'll make you a VP and give you the 180. And then now you've got people at a VP level who are now then going to affect everything below them and lateral to them.
You're not just not setting them up for success, but you're not setting your organization up for success.
Well, and you're not setting up the people that they're leading for success, because right now you got people who have not been, have not had the right experience in the right scenario at the right moment in time at a level of influence in organizations that are going to start declaring themselves. You're going to start to be seeing cracks in the fascia coming over the next few years.
Fascinating stuff here. And we called it here first on the podcast, 2022 State of the Union with Joe Mullings here.
Hey everybody, first I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the podcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Pause Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the podcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the podcast, and you can get it all at thepausecourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster using it for B2B and B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepausecourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks.
Before we went on air, we were talking about I'm on the verge of launching a new division of NHP Talent Group focused on everything Web3. And it's not just your JPEG NFTs out there, but the technology behind it. And we spoke last year about the concept of the resume locker, if you recall. And I thought about this the other day. I'm like, holy shit, Joe was onto this. And this is the idea of using technology, specifically the blockchain, decentralized platform, where your employment history, for better or worse, is stored. It's a verified source. Everything is on there. How have your thoughts evolved on the technology and this idea around migrating from a traditional CV, migrating from the LinkedIn profile, which I do not think, for the record, the LinkedIn profile will not and should not replace a resume because not everyone has access to it. Not everyone uses it the same. Plus, it's owned by somebody else, a company called Microsoft. So let's park that one over there. Your thoughts on an update, 2022 edition, on the resume locker?
Yeah, so resume locker's in development. And the intention there was, this is who I am as a person. This is right, because I'm not a crunchy granola tree hugger type. I'm a very pragmatic capitalist. I also am a business owner, multiple businesses, and I also want to know, what is it that makes you tick, and who do you want to become, and can I create that environment in my organization in order to facilitate who you want to become, both personally, professionally, potentially spiritually, and I didn't mean that religiously either. And so what the resume locker does is allows you to show, you own it, you own the combination, you own the key. You will have the leading edge item, the resume and or the LinkedIn profile, that will be the bait. And then once somebody presents to you, here's our company, here's our opportunity, Paz, here's what we're thinking about for you, you then go, okay, you've got 24-hour access to my resume locker. And here is my life, here are my children, here are my hobbies, here are my sports. By the way, on the side, I'm a photographer. I'm also an endurance athlete. I'm also pursuing late in life a pilot's license. And here is my qualified, verified CV, education, and references from people that I've worked from before who can speak to that. Here's my body of work. Better hires will be made. Better work environment will be made as bespoke as possible for who you want to become. And you have a responsibility as the individual to make sure that, and it's again verified, to make sure that that only gets in the hands of the people that can't print it, they can't do anything with it, right?
They can just view it.
And they can just view it. And of course you can videotape or whatever you want to do. And I'm sure there'll be some technology sooner or later that won't even allow you to videotape a screen. But it gives you insight, and there might be an agreement in place that says this is confidential information. Should you violate this confidential information there'll be legal bills to pay.
But isn't this kind of, if I'm reading between the lines, this is basically creating your avatar in the metaverse. This is my employment, my life. This is who I am when I want to present myself to an employee. It's living in the metaverse, the sandbox, whatever. Maybe you could have your the Mullings group virtual next to between Kanye and Snoop Dogg over there, however you want to do it.
It's not any different than a credit report, okay? Right. So a bank is
old school technology,
right? Old school, but look, history doesn't repeat itself. Patterns repeat themselves, right? And so, what an institution was judging your trustworthiness for them to give you their money, and you at that point in time were either a beggar or you were a shopper. Because if you had great credit and you had lots of cash and you were fluid, but you wanted to put somebody else's money at work on your behalf, they were chasing you to give you their money. If you're a businessman who's successful, you know what that feeling is. It's very nice to have. And so what you did is you then had a construct that was verified out in, not the metaverse, but the digital landscape of, hey, here's what American Express says about you, verified. Here's what Visa says about you. Here's what your last 4 mortgage companies say about you.
Credit rating.
That's what you're looking at here. Now, as long as you have a good credit rating, you could use it as a tool. And so the same thing with the resume locker. You will be able to use your history on the judgment of the potential employer.
We're not going to go down the route of scoring, right? We don't want, scoring is a different.
We score everything. You scored your wife before you let her select you. You didn't pick her.
She selected me.
That's what I'm saying. But you scored her. We're scoring machines. We have to make judgments on things based on algorithms.
Algorithms of life. So with that being said, let's talk about goals for you personally and professionally. What is on Joe Mullings' 2022 professional goal list? Speaking of scoring.
So projects we have in play. Goals goals are a destination. I don't like goals. Projects we have in play. Because once you reach a goal, unless you've designed the goal beyond it, that whole infrastructure crashes and then you have nothing to do. So that's how I feel about goals, right? So
Mullingisms.
So we just started. I'm really excited with the DF team, the Dragonfly team. We are doing a documentary on the town of Telluride, Colorado.
On my list, we'll get to that.
Let's
talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
When did you first fall in love with Telluride?
2008, the day I got off the plane with a good friend of mine who took me out there skiing. I don't like skiing. I got off the plane and within 15 seconds, I'm like, I will spend part of my life here forever.
Was it that landing strip where you just come in and you just kind of hit the runway? I've done it.
Well, part of it is landing in Telluride, which is the second highest public airport. It's epic. It's just the people, the vibe, the history of it, the Box Canyon. You're floored by the beauty every time you see it. Every morning you wake up. You're floored by the people are amazing.
Not Vail, it's not Aspen. It doesn't have that vibe to it. The people that get there, it takes effort to get there, and you're there for a reason. It's
a box canyon. Nearest stoplight's 30-something miles away, and there's no through traffic. And the town knows who it is, welcomes everybody, but also tends to purge people who shouldn't be there.
Right. The folks that shouldn't be there should not. So what's the impetus behind this documentary? And is it more of a passion project, or how does it tie to business goals?
So look, DF is a very, very, very strong business of ours, Dragonfly. Our 160 studios is big. I mentioned earlier, it's really important. You have a responsibility to the people you work with all the time. And I take the responsibility I have to the DF family very seriously. And they're creatives. And look, they're hand-selected creatives from around the industry. Mm-hmm. And they come in every day and do an unbelievable delivery of service and creative in a studio sometimes with True Future out on the road. And when we had True Future and we were going to Israel and Germany and the UK, they got to flex their creative side in areas out in the field with, we don't know what's going to happen, let's see what happens, right? You don't get that in a studio. And so my love for Telluride, it's a story that needed to be told. And I was sitting one night and I'm like, wait, there's a convergence opportunity here. My creatives deserve and need a place to flex and teach me. I said, and there was an opportunity coming up about potentially doing a doc. So we got together with the movers and shakers and of the people in Telluride, and they agreed. So they are opening their proverbial, I don't know if it's a kimono in a mining town, but or ski jacket in a ski town, but anyway, they're opening it up for us. And we were just out there a couple of weeks ago with Johnny Stevens and Ron Allred, who were two very, very, very important people in the making of the mountain. And it's going to be about a 14-month project for us. So I have that onus to Telluride. I have that onus more so to my DF team on fulfilling what they need to do. And sometimes, Paz, I'm just like, hey, let's do this and see what happens.
Love it. And that's something that I picked up from you, and something that really is standing out to me in the last 2 minutes is when you have a team, especially in the creative space or really anything, you want to give them the opportunity. You want to create the opportunity for them to do their best work, for them to be inspired. And it all comes back is why they want to be part of this, why they want to work for you. Because you're giving them these opportunities. You're creating them and saying, here you go, boys and girls, get at it.
Well, I'm not giving it to them. I would not have been inspired to pursue this if not but for them. Right? So that's really important to understand. Like, they get me to look at things differently. The DF concept and now the reality of it, they have created so much lateral thinking in my mind. I do say that is a big part of the reason for my personal creative explosion over the last 4 or 5 years.
Are you going to be the host and the narrator of this project?
We're trying to we're trying to have the story tell itself.
Love that. I remove yourself from the...
I do not want to be... This is not the Joe Show in True Future. This is... The challenge that this team has had is, how are we going to tell the story? We don't know yet, but it's not going to be you telling it. And so that is the beauty of the matrix here, of how are we going to pull this off?
And what are you learning personally through this process?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, with Telluride, the things that we've listened to in the stories over the 3.5 days we were there, I'm becoming a better storyteller.
It's tremendous. And I think, and I talk about this all the time, 2 days ago, my 3-year anniversary of the podcast, and my first 100 guests, my ability to tell stories, my ability to just literally walk in here at 9 o'clock in the morning, throw a couple of notes and have a quality, proper conversation, that wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the ability to storytell transcends everything that you do in life and in business. Relationships. People ask, oh, what do you get out of the podcast? What do you get from it? The guests, you get sponsors. I go, it's so much more than that. Mm-hmm. Personal development that leads to business. What else is on the horizon outside of Telluride for these guys?
Well, Telluride's on the horizon. We are right now kicking off MedTech TV, which is a pretty substantial initiative. It's going to be its own media company. So, the health tech, med tech, healthcare industry is a $1 trillion industry. There's not a weather channel for it. There's not an ESPN sports channel for it. There's not, an MSNBC channel for it. So we are coming out of the gate with our first rev on it, probably at the end of March. But it will be 24/7 health tech, med tech TV, as presented from both a medical side, a healthcare side, a consumer side. The convergence of medical technologies and healthcare into the consumer market is a tidal wave. And we are going to have 24/7, we're going to have news on it. We're going to have talk shows. We're going to have Shark Tanks. We're going to have industry sponsored. And so that is super exciting. That is probably one of the biggest massive lifts that I've ever had.
I love it. And these are the type of conversations that inspire me, surrounding myself with folks like Joe and Bert here, who I've been watching them build this empire here. So I want to go back for a moment and not do the full Mullings origin story here, but I want to talk about something that I think is relevant to me. I mentioned before that I'm in the process of launching a new division, something I don't know anything about, and I'm learning every day. And it's not just the right click save mafia here, but the technology behind it inspires me. I'm going down rabbit holes every single day, and I'm learning. Walk us back your decision and those early days of understanding the medtech industry and why. Just for a little bit.
Yeah, real quick.
So this is more for me, folks, because I wanted to ask Joe this.
I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer since I'm a kid. Like I could walk. I wanted to make things, unwind things, take things apart. When we decided in a search firm in 1989 what we wanted to pursue, I knew. In fact, it's funny. I wish I had it here. I have my notebook. I have my notes from 1991 on what it was going to be. And look, people were going to want it to live longer, and not just longer, but better. Technology would always seek a higher ground. It had a built-in governor to it, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. The barrier to entry, and I'll get back why the FDA is important. The barrier to entry was so high because you had to understand multiple disease states, whether it's peripheral vascular disease, heart disease, neuro, coronary, orthopedics. So knowing all that, and then the subspecialties within that, and then all the functional roles, design, development, clin, reg, quality, marketing. So I knew that people were like, no, I'm going to go do accounting, right?
It would weed out the scrappers.
All my competition.
The scrapper recruiters.
All my competition, right? The FDA was important because the FDA governs the growth. So medtech grows at about 8% per year. But within that 8% per year, because the FDA makes sure that it keeps the public safe, there are micro markets that grow anywhere from 20 to 30% per year. So those micro markets in the past have been surgical robotics. We see telehealth now. We see structural heart. So there are these micro markets that are billions of dollars.
The riches are in the niches.
They always are. And the venture money was going after that. Now private equity money, and now crowdfunding is going after that. So what we would do is we would sit in the pocket in that 5 to 7% growth, classic medtech, but we would pursue and forecast what the micro markets were, where that explosive growth occurred, and venture money came in and was tossing big money at big salaries and big technologies, because then you could lock up big markets. That's why I chose medtech.
And that's the opportunity. That's absolutely incredible, and I appreciate that. So what advice would you give me as I venture down a something that's out of my area of expertise from a business standpoint?
If it's for headhunting?
I'm going to be recruiting in this space.
So I would go out and hire a subject matter expert immediately. We just did that. Well, we've built the #1 search firm in the world in medtech, but we are now hiring people out of industry who I don't have to teach the industry to. In fact, they could be my Sherpa, even though I think we know more than most of the people in the industry because they're stuck in one functional role, we're in all of them. But we had a gentleman start this week who came out of Medtronic, and he was an executive at Medtronic in a certain area of circulatory support heart failure, where we do a lot of work. So we are now pursuing people who are coming out of medtech, because one is we can afford to pay those $150 to $250 salaries plus bonus. They right now want to come out of that market because I don't know if I want to spend any more time in there. And headhunting is cool. Headhunting, the way TMG does it, is cool. Way. To be on camera, a media company, and change companies and careers, yeah, I want to do that. So I would say your #1 thing is go get a subject matter expert and bring her or him into your organization, because you can teach them the strategy of recruiting and human nature in job changes. They can save you the time of running down the wrong rabbit holes.
And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So I am, feels good. That
confirmation of your genius.
Well, that's subjective as well there too, but I do certainly appreciate that. So let's bring it home here. How's the flying going, man? I mean, literally, is this guy ever here? Right? He's always in a plane. I always see these beautiful shots out the window. I think he just has like a whole stock footage image, but Is every sunset perfect when you're up that high?
When you're up that high, it is. Man.
Above the clouds?
It is. Everything's perfect above the clouds, right?
Focus, no phone, no distractions, locked in you and the machine.
Locked in me and the machine.
You and the bird.
Love it. Yeah, we have a corporate plane that we use to get around a lot. You guys saw the shots from yesterday coming back from Boston, and we have the smaller one that I use, the Cirrus SR22 and the Conquest, the twin turbine. I sit right seat in the Conquest, and I sit left seat in the Cirrus. So I love it. It's engineering, it's Zen, it's decision making with consequences, which I love. It's constant learning. It's a fabulous cohort of people who are incredibly generous to share their knowledge with. And there's something about allowing 1 mile of tarmac to take you anywhere in the world. There's nowhere else you could use 1 mile of tarmac to go anywhere in the world unless you have a plane.
That's absolutely incredible. Talk about the Zen up there. What has that done for you spiritually?
It keeps my brain plastic, right? So, I love to learn, and there's an enormous amount of learning, but there's also a lot of intuition. You start to get connected to the plane. You can actually feel the RPMs in the plane. You know what the engine's doing. You know when the engine's off, when it's not quite running right. You can tell in a turn where you are, but at the same time, you're taking in all these evidence-based metrics on the glass, on the dash. It's why I'm 60 next week.
Wow.
And I find I've got to continue to be voraciously learning things deep.
What was a key misconception or mistake that you've made recently in the last 6 months as you're working your way up flying ladder?
Well, luckily none of them were catastrophic.
It's here today.
I think probably one of the, it wasn't a big mistake. There's something called flaps on a plane. And when you're taking off and when you're landing, they're really important. They change the dynamics of the plane quite a bit. And in one of the maneuvers I was doing, we weren't at quite the climb rate that I thought I should have been at, and couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was something as simple as me not throwing the last set of flaps up on the Cirrus.
Did you panic?
Never. And I've got some great instructors I work with, and they put you in compromised situations. And they stretch. Look, I have no amygdala, so I don't panic. Amygdala is your center of fear, right? I figured that out a long time ago.
Yeah, that's why you are who you are.
Right. And so I think it's really important that, panic causes your inability to make really well thought out decisions. So no, have not had a panic situation yet. My instructors are phenomenal, and they put me in stretch the envelope scenarios a lot, along the way. So haven't had a panic situation yet.
I love it. So let's bring it home here. And I literally just pulled this question out of thin air. Joe Mullings gives up recruiting, and now he's working in a fortune cookie factory, and he's actually the one writing the fortunes. What fortune do you want to leave for everybody heading into the rest of 22? What are you scribing on that little piece of paper? I'm not asking for the lottery, lucky numbers here. We're just asking for the fortune.
I like that story. Reflect on everything, regret nothing.
Regret's a tough one. I've been really trying to park that one in my life.
Reflect. Your fortune cookie today, my friend, is reflect on everything and regret nothing.
Love it. We're going to wrap it up with that one. Everyone out there, I really hope that you took this one in. Every time we do this, it gets deeper and more special and so many learnings. And selfishly, I kind of do this for me so I could look back and get some tips myself. But Joe Mullings, as always, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Dragonfly crew, everyone back there for the hard work that you do. You guys are incredible. I'm watching. Other people are watching. Joe Mullings, keep inspiring everyone. Keep inspiring your team, your family. Keep inspiring yourself. Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you, Joe. And everyone out there, remember, you can find more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels, and we'll catch you next time for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.